Has one former pass-catching bust reached must-start status in the FFPC main event championship round? Which Eagles should be trotting out there with Gardner Minshew tossing the ball to them against Dallas? And do you trust one AFC East receiver a week after his big gaffe? Plus, the 21st place team in the Football Guys Players Championship regular season, Rick Kaufman, will drop by to talk about Tyler Algier versus the Ravens, whether Pat Freiermuth rebounds against the Raiders, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Happy holidays, and stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour officially starts now.
Stay under pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome in. Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and the Fantasy Football Players Championship. My co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we'll be discussing whether Captain Kirk should be in your lineups again this week, what to expect from Greg Dulcich against the Rams, and more. Plus, the 21st place team in the Football Guys Players Championship regular season, Rick Kaufman, will join us to discuss whether Marquise Brown is better off on your bench this week, if Chase Claypool is going to be a smart sleeper to draft in 2023, and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, please do so. The show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship on Twitter at KFFSC Official or at KFFSC.com, Facebook.com/HSFF Hours where to reach us. You can email the show, at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if you have any questions for us. Now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the questions, tweets, emails, and more in the fantasy feedback segment coming on later in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. Hey, if you have not heard, there is a change to the FFPC Weekly Challenge for Week 16 this week, because I believe we have the better part of a dozen games going off tomorrow, Saturday, Christmas Eve. We will be having the cutoff for the FFPC Weekly Challenge at 1 p.m. Saturday afternoon. That's tomorrow, less than 24 hours away. You want to get in late on Sunday? You're not going to be able to do it because there's only 3 games going on Sunday night, 1 game going on, 3 games going on Sunday and 1 game going on Monday night. So if you want to get in that, it's a great contest. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. If you want to play in the slim format without kickers and defenses, you can choose 10 players. If you want to play in the classic format with defenses, you can choose 12 players. Just get them in by Saturday's kickoff this week. Only 1 player per NFL team. You can play in a 100-team format, a 30-team format for $35 or $200. And if you get in the 10-team format, you beat all the other 9 people in your league, you will win a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event where you can play for $1 million next year. Going to be a lot of fun. I shouldn't say play for $1 million. It'd be like $6 million in the prize pool, $1 million to first place next year. Speaking of big prizes, we have a couple more of them in store here before we turn the page on the 2023 NFL regular season. You can play for a $500,000 grand prize in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. That is open for registration right now, as well as the Football Guys Playoff Challenge, where you can win $100,000, only $35 to join that one as well. So check that out at myffpc.com. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown that we did about 2 hours or so ago, right on this FFPC YouTube channel, watch it. You can check it out. Me and 16th place FFPC main event regular season finisher Brian Jasiak joined me. We talked a lot about the stuff that we probably won't get to tonight because we only have a finite amount of time. It's a High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, not the High Stakes Fantasy Football Day. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. You can check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast or the FFPC YouTube channel. Remember, speaking of the YouTube channel, remember to like, the video that you're watching, subscribe to the channel you're watching, comment on the video that you're watching, share the video with everybody else, and then click that notification bell so you are notified every time we go live on this channel. I understand you maybe get sick of me and my face on this channel. Here's somebody you never get sick of hearing from and watching, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, one J. Farrell Elliott. Welcome in, man.
Hey, buddy, I'm trying to wake my face up.
What's wrong with your face? You had a busy week again?
Oh, tomorrow night is Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing. And there's just been a bevy of activity this week, and we're freezing to death down here in Kentucky is stuff you would laugh at. But have you had a head injury? What is going on? What are you?
No,
that's a Packer cap.
Yeah, it's my Packer
sort of
Christmas hat, Santa hat, whatever you want to call it. I actually got this at the game last year, the Christmas Day game that I took my son to, where the Packers narrowly were upset by Baker Mayfield's Browns.
Now that you leaned back, I got a different view of it, and yeah, I can see for a while there, I thought you might be going on IR.
No. Well, I'm sure that's coming, but much later in the season.
Slipped on the ice over at RotoViz or something. I don't know.
It happens, and there's plenty of ice and snow going on out there. Really across the Midwestern part of the country, northeastern part of the country. So make sure you're taking extra care if you are traveling this holiday season too. We certainly don't want to have you miss out on hanging out with us because we enjoy our audience. We love participating with you. We love the back and forth. We already got a few people commenting in the chat room right now. Hudson Kern-Reeve leading the way right now with a Tyler Algier question. We're going to get to that with our guest, Rick Kaufman, coming up in about 10 minutes. Before we do that, I do want to go over some of the stuff that took place last night because we do have another week to prepare for after this one where the big money will be awarded. Robert Saleh said after the game last night that the Jets used, and I'm going to butcher his name. Farrell, you probably know him because he's an old CFL guy, right? Chris Streveler?
Chris Streveler, you've got it right.
Streveler. Okay. And he did play in the CFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
he did more than play in the CFL. He was the same kind of quarterback up there that he is. I've got a real quick, interesting story.
Please.
My buddy J.R. Fenton told me about Streveler because his son was on the swim team at that school. And so that he was familiar, or one of those Dakotas, but he was familiar with the player, and he kept talking to me about the player. I mentioned the player to a CFL scout. Streveler goes to a CFL workout and gets a deal. And Craig Smith was a scout, and he ends up at Winnipeg. He makes the team, and he was really featured as a running back. Starting quarterback got injured, and he came in for 8 games. Threw the ball well, ran the ball even better, rushed for damn near 800 yards and 12 touchdowns that year, keeping them in position to go on and win the 2019 Grey Cup with Winnipeg. And that's what got his ticket into the NFL. And he's been a successful journeyman backup quarterback. And Thursday night, we saw exactly what he could do. He's got a serviceable arm and very good skills with his feet, but there was very little that the Jets as a team could make a run there.
Well, and I bring it up because he was on the practice squad. He gets called up a few hours before kickoff, and then he ends up going basically in one half of football, 54 rushing yards on 9 carries.
Right.
Threw for 90 yards. Zach Wilson was a train wreck once again. I guess the thing that we take away from this is going forward to week 17, if you are playing in a contest that still has waivers open, like KFFSC, like some of the FFPC leagues, Zonovan Knight has gone from must start to cuttable at this point. Now, Michael Carter did catch 5 balls last night. And I know if you're hit with injuries, I think he's best as a desperation guy. Farrell, what do you make of Garrett Wilson right now? Because Garrett Wilson carried a lot of people through different parts of the season. And now people in the championship round of the main event, the Football Guys Players Championship, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship main event, you're looking at Garrett Wilson as a guy who was locked in your starting lineup. If it's Streveler or even if it's Wilson next week against, I think they play Seattle. I don't know what you're doing with Garrett Wilson. Can you shed some light on this?
If you get my quiet back, you can play him. Yeah, with Streveler, Chris is a change of pace guy, and he's not going to necessarily light up the ball through the air. It's a good possession receiver game, supplementing the run game. He's not a starting quarterback in this league right now. He came in and gave the team a little jump, and that's what it was. Mike White, you've got to, we talked about it before, Balky. The training staff has to rally for the New York Jets and get this player healthy and get him on the field. It's a full team to make this work. And that's what everyone who's in business with the Jets need is Mike White to return to the lineup.
We have a question right now from the YouTube chat. It is from noted KFFSC Shark and former guest of this show, Stacy Perez. She wants to know, of course, Stacy has a loaded team, as she always does. She has to bench one of these players here, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Devontae Smith, or Jerick McKinnon. Now, Hudson has already chimed in the chat. You can't bench McKinnon, and I'm with him. I think McKinnon is for sure locked in starting here. So it comes down to Moore, Deontay Johnson, and Devontae Smith. We'll get in to Gardner Minshew mania here probably a couple of times before the show ends. But Farrell, I think that's the tiebreaker for me. Don't necessarily trust Minshew to be able to distribute the ball to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, and Dallas Goedert, who's expected back this week. So I think I'm going to bench Smith, go with Moore, Johnson, and McKinnon. What say you on this one?
I don't think I'm going to bench Devonta Smith. The reason is Minshew has been very much prepared for this opportunity. He started 2 games last year, and he threw for 450 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Oddly enough, one of those games was against Dallas last year. The other, I think, was against the Jets. He's a capable quarterback who has accepted his role as an understudy and has probably prepared for this all year. When you're a quarterback like Minshew, you understand backing up a player like Hurts that at any moment your opportunity could come. And it's more likely to be injury-based than skill-based. So now he gets his opportunity, and he is playing behind the premier offensive line in football. And I've watched so many quarterbacks struggling to try to get time to throw the ball. And that's what Minshew will have. And he's accurate. Who is going to be the most accurate pass catcher in this group? Devonta Smith has a chance to take the short pass, run with it after he catches it. I don't want Devonta Smith on my bench. DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson have questionable quarterbacks as well. I think that's where my bench play comes from.
I think the other thing, too, to keep in mind on this, and this is something that Dizzle always used to say, when you have a team, as you're making a decision here with as much talent as you have, Stacy, chances are you're probably not going to get this right. So I would say, don't sweat it. Go with your gut on this. I'm going to say bench Devontae Smith. I think Farrell made a pretty good case against it. And in fact, Zach Kruger from NBC Sports Edge and RotoViz, who was on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show with me on Wednesday, download the app in the App Store or Google Play for free right now if you want to watch that. He defended Minshew for about 2 hours, Farrell, and why he gets a bad rap, but he thinks that he can still make all these Eagles guys relevant on Saturday. So tomorrow, which we should see. And Hudson's pointing this out too in the chat right now. Dallas secondary didn't look exactly like world beaters last week. So there is something to be said for Devontae Smith. Hopefully that helps you out. Stacy, I have a new nickname for Evan Engram, Farrell.
What?
Evan Engram is now known as the Thief because he is going to be stealing a ton of cash from some NFL team that is going to give him an exorbitant, egregious contract in free agency this offseason. Never seen this guy do what he's been doing this season. The last 3 weeks, he has been unbelievable. He's going to finish as one of the top tight ends in fantasy football this year. Anybody who drafted him in a tight end premium format loves it. Last night alone, everybody sucked last night. Maybe not ETN. Trevor Lawrence saved himself maybe a little bit with the rushing yards. Evan Engram, 7 catches, 113 yards. He looked awesome. 26 catches for 332 touchdowns in the last 3 games. It's absolutely insane what he's doing right now. He's been doing it all season long. I'll tell you this right now. For drafts next year, and I get it, you got to play him down the stretch now. Week 17, he's got to be in your lineup. But I'm telling you this right now. He will be on 0 of my teams next year. He's going to go way too high, and I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And with my bad knee, I shouldn't be throwing anybody. Evan Engram, congratulations on a fantastic 2022. Color me skeptical on him continuing this going forward in the next season, Farrell.
Where did he go in this year's draft?
That is a great point.
Where is
I'm going to bring that. We're going to
get Mr. Armani when we need him.
We're going to get the mojo on this.
He's here in August and September, and then he just goes away, and we need him. And you've made a statement. He's been doing this all year. Balky, he has not.
Well, I mean, everybody has ebbs and flows, but you look at the tight end
No,
position.
he has more ebbs.
More ebbs than flows.
He's seriously into ebbing. There's 4 games this year with just 1 catch, and in some of those games, that's all he was targeted was 1 or 2 times. It was week 8 before he found the end zone. I've never been a big fan of this player. He's having a little bit of a run right now, and it probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're moving safeties to try to contend Kirk and leaving the field open. He runs a skinny post pretty good for a tight end. You know why he's really good at that? Because he never blocks anybody. So he's you know, if you're making fantasy points with this player, if you made it to a point where you're playing meaningful games at this time, it's a happy accident. You probably got there with a Zach Ertz who's no longer available to you. Perhaps you had Andrews, who has stepped back in his performance. Evan Ingram, yes, he's put together a short resume of 4 games, and it has been impressive. It's not as impressive as, say, what you might have from Johnson at New Orleans. Dulcich has the opportunity to really have a ceiling game where Ingram particularly does not. You know, last night we were playing against a Jets team that didn't have a lot going for it, but they still have their shutdown corners. They're very, very good. That's why we saw what we saw in the middle of the field. Not to continue beating up the fact on Evan Ingram, but yes, he's having his best year. He'll probably end up with 70-plus catches. He might have already caught more balls this year than he ever has in the NFL. But he is those are numbers that you can't live with during the regular season because this is a happy accident that he's being successful right now.
Shout out to Bob Ross for the happy accident. I am looking right now, trying to find his career stats. So right now, 68 catches on the season, 723 yards. The most catches he ever had in his career before this was his rookie year in 2017 when he had 64 and 722. He had 6 touchdowns that year, so he's already broken his record for most catches in a year and most yardage in a year. And he's still got another 2 games to go with Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I'm all for him. He's never impressed me as a particularly try-hard kind of guy. And I'm not watching Jacksonville every week, and I'm not watching every play. And he may have found a culture and environment and a coach that he can live with. But I just no, if he goes high next year, those numbers as it compares to some of the tight ends that you expect to make those numbers, it's not the same kind of contribution.
Evan Ingram, by the way, according to the Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, Darren Armani providing this data. He went off as the 20th tight end off the board at the 1303 on average in FFPC main event.
And so those guys that have him, there's been not necessarily any reason to cut him. And you've waited around for this, you still would have had to guess that he would have had the good for, we're on a 4-game run. So you would have had to got hot for the first game. Maybe you've had 2 or 3 good games in a row with him, which is more than I would have thought you would have got out of it.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is like, keep in mind that the tight end position has been awful this year. So, and you mentioned those games that were clunkers. I think outside of Travis Kelce, hasn't everybody had games like that too? And then now next year, you're going to be paying a premium for it. That's the part I struggle with is I'm fine with him in the 13th. Now he goes in the 13th round again. I'm all over. He's going to be going in the single digit rounds. And that's my problem. And he's a free agent too. So we don't he could stay in Jacksonville. He could end up elsewhere. And if he ends up elsewhere, then you got to consider new coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, new everything. And then where are you at on Evan Ingram? That's the part that gets confusing to me. Brandon Cooks is questionable for the game against Tennessee tomorrow, according to Aaron Wilson on Twitter. Now, he's been battling a calf injury. Wilson says he is set to play. He has not played in almost a month and has not gotten 75 yards since week 1. He has gotten into the end zone one more time than you and I have, Farrell. 1 touchdown this season. Now, Nico Collins officially shelved on injured reserve, so he is not playing this week. He's not playing the rest of the year. The problem for me is, well, there's several problems with this. I understand that again, rosters are locked. It's desperation. Okay, you can put him in as a flex. But with me, man, Tennessee Titans defense continues to outplay how good they actually are, in my opinion. The Brandon Cooks aspect of this situation has always, like, what do we always say about him? He's quarterback proof. He's offense proof. Well, this year he's been awful. And now he's been off for 3 weeks, and he's going to come in, and all of a sudden he's going to turn it around against pretty good defense. I don't see that happening. A healthy Brandon Cooks still is not making it into my lineups this week, Farrell.
No, Miss Perez continues in the chat room, and she's correct. I've tried to think about what scenarios would create me to consider playing Brandon Cooks, because if I'm in meaningful games, chances are I got better receivers than Brandon Cooks to begin with, and I certainly didn't rely on him to get me here. Although Balky, he was a favorite of ours. 6th round Balky early in the year. He was a favorite of ours as we were going. So, and it is weather related. For instance, I have one lineup, good friend Trevor Holt, and I have an FFPC team in the main event doing well. And so we have to make a decision about the Cleveland game where the weather is supposed to be brutal. And we have Peoples-Jones and Snead at New Orleans. And while in perfect conditions, I'd love to play those players. Would I play Brandon Cooks over those guys if I had him? I don't know. So I think that's how Brandon Cooks makes it into lineups this week. And I think if he does, he gives an opportunity to do some things. Although I sure hope you can find a better player.
Yeah, me too. That's the best possible advice we can give you on Brandon Cooks this week, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of best possible advice, let's bring in our guest tonight. He has been playing fantasy football for darn near 30 years, maybe a little over 30 years now. He's still running the very same league, Farrell, that he started playing in back in 1992, still running that same league.
Wow. Same guys, I wonder.
I would assume that most of them, we'll ask him when he comes on, but his cousin John actually introduced him to the FFPC back in 2018. He's been playing a few leagues there and shared a team with John in the Football Guys Players Championship. Now, after winning his first league there, his first entry there with the FPC, he's gotten his own teams, and he's increased the number of teams that he's had. In fact, I think he's winning about a third of all the leagues he's joined so far. This year was his first foray into the FFPC main event. Won his league. Congratulations. Like me, grew up in Wisconsin. He's a huge Packers fan, which is awesome. He's lived in the Chicago area for the last 30-plus years. We want to welcome him in right now. Please welcome the 21st place team owner in the 2022 Football Guys regular season. It is the incomparable Rick Kaufman. Rick, thank you so much for hopping aboard. Happy holidays, man.
Hey, happy holidays to you guys.
Rick
so I'm wearing my Packer stocking hat in honor of the holidays and in honor of having a fellow Packers fan on the show tonight. What part of Wisconsin did you grow up in?
I'm actually at my mom's house right now in Oshkosh.
You are literally like 25 minutes down 41 from me right now. I'm up in Appleton. That's fantastic. This is bringing people together, Farrell. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it too. Do you have a in-studio audience there, Rick, in Oshkosh? Do you have somebody sitting there?
Yeah, my daughters are helping me with the technical stuff.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How many girls do you have?
I have 2 daughters with me, and my wife, my mom's in the background, and my brother and son are there. They can't hear you right now, but they're out there laughing at me right now.
I have no direct access to FFPC materials and knowledge of things. I do have some clandestine back channel skills from other career that I previously had. But even when that doesn't work, if I have a question, I call Chris Lambert and ask her. And I've been putting together some numbers on you. You're winning at about a 30% rate. And in an expected outcome of 1 out of 12, I will say congratulations to you. And if your girls are not gifted in math like I am, I will tell them that your father is a savant to fantasy football and will continue to use it to buy you Christmas presents and other great things in America. Now, who was it that turned you on to the FFPC?
My cousin John Mayers. Actually, he's right up there he's now in Green Bay. But I believe Eric, he said that he's friends with you on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys interviewed him about 3 years ago when he was having a good season. And Yeah, he brought me in. My brother also plays as well, and he plays with FFPC, and he's got a couple leagues. He didn't do as well as I have done this year, so I'm holding that over his head. But yeah,
so,
we're
and he's not on the Christmas Eve show either with us. And so there's a couple things. First of all, I have two goals for the upcoming year, 2023. And I don't think it's too early to talk about that. The first is I would like to approach a 30% win rate in the FFPC. That would be one of my goals. My second goal is to, like yourself or like your cousin John, get Balky to friend me on Facebook. And then I'm going to get on to RotoViz, and so they're trying to they're telling me I got to come up with some real content to get on to RotoViz. But we started the FFPC in 2010. Cousin John didn't step into referrals until 2018. Our first show is going to be Rick Kaufman, The Missing Years. That's what we're coming up with. But during those missing years, you obviously learned how to play this hobby and are very good at it. Do you surprise yourself with this element of success that you've had? And I wish you to keep it up. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. I love football. I love NFL football. I'm a big fan. So I've been, I was at the Packer game Monday night. Took my daughter to the game Monday night, and I follow it. My family makes fun of me for being in so many leagues. This year it was 9 leagues, and other than my own league that I run, which doesn't really have playoffs because we just do total points, and it's a really unique point system that we've kept in place since 1992. But other than that league, which I'm not doing well in, I've made the playoffs in the 8 other leagues. 4 of them were FFPCs, 1 main event. So, it's come down to preparation, quite honestly. Yes, I have a couple things. I don't like to do early drafts. I kind of wait and sit back and get my feel. I really start paying attention. I love the draft, so I love watching the draft and finding out and doing a little scouting while the draft's going on. I enjoy that aspect. And then about mid-July is when I start really, preparing and looking at the football teams, what's going on, because training camps are starting, then it gets my juices going. About the beginning of August, I start doing some best balls. And then as I see what's coming down the pipe with best balls, and where players are going off the board, what the so-called experts are doing. A shout out. I know, Joe Bryant and Sigmund and those guys. I read
those guys?
Well, I don't know them, but I read up. And I get their subscription. It's free, so that's why.
I tell you what, those are great guys. But I mean, you had me, Balky. Rick had me at I love football. That tells me all I have to know. As soon as he said that, I love football, that explains everything to me, because I think that's the key thing of what you have to have.
Yeah, you're among friends here with that, Rick, for sure.
Yep. So it's that's kind of where I go to, and I start like I said, about the middle of August is when I'll start looking to set up my drafts.
Yeah, well, we got new plans for you coming up for 2023. We'll discuss later. We're going to upset that schedule.
Well, listen, when you win the $500,000 this year, Rick, that you're going to be able to afford to draft earlier than maybe you're comfortable, but it's going to make it easier for you to repeat in 2023 for sure. All right, so let me ask you this: little baptism by fire here. Our resident Ivy League professor, Hudson Kern-Reeve, is in the YouTube chat right now. He wants to know if we expect Christian Watson to return to form this week. And I'll tell you this, as far as when I look at this Dolphins-Packers game on Christmas Day, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. The total on this has gone up by 4 or 5 points throughout the week. So apparently the over money is coming in right now. Buffalo was really successful throwing the ball to their running backs and tight ends. Josh Allen was this past week. And I'd like to think that the Packers can replicate that, maybe not with the tight end, but with the running backs for sure, with Aaron Jones and Dillon. So I almost think not only is the idea to keep Tagovailoa, Hill, and Waddle off the field, but you want to control the clock and have your best players out there carrying the rock. And that's it starts with Aaron Jones. And it also it's going to continue with A.J. Dillon. Now, I'm not going to say that Watson is not going to be part of the game plan, but I would think that maybe he gets in the end zone, maybe he doesn't. I'm more bullish on Jones and Dillon once again this week than I am Watson. So I'm a little bit nervous about starting Christian Watson this week. Rick, what do you think?
I agree with you. I think if Lefevre would if he Jones is the guy I kind of set my draft strategy around, and in the FFPC I have him on 3 of my teams. When they use him and they use him properly, the Green Bay Packers win games. Problem is they don't use them that way. And then you get Aaron Rodgers trying to go off and be the stat quarterback that he is, and he wants to do his own way, his own thing. I think you need to pound. I 100% agree with you. You need to have those running backs involved in the game, whether it's running or short passes to the running backs to keep the high-powered Miami offense off the field. And I got Tyreek Hill in a league, and I have him in 2 leagues, so I need him to perform. But
I think you will.
But I little leery of the wide receivers for Green Bay. But I do like both Dylan. I have him in 1 league. I have Aaron Jones in 4 leagues. So I'm hoping that they do something right for a change, because this year has been a lot of bad decisions by the Packer coaching staff.
Yeah, a lot of bad decisions by a lot of people involved in Green Bay for sure.
I am not personally offended that in the chat room, Hudson Kern Reeve, he
didn't address you in the question.
Yeah, he addressed the 2 Green Bay experts. I obviously know nothing about Green Bay football. He didn't even mention me. So I will come to something a little closer to home in Louisville, Kentucky. We'll go down to Nashville and talk about where all the receivers are very, very exciting. You said you love football. That makes me be a big Rick fan. But I got to tell you, somebody who's on your roster that will test your love of football is one Mr. Treylon Burks. Now, I didn't roster him much this year, and I'm curious if you moved him on and off your roster from times. But these are August and September dreams that aren't coming true. And do you ever get tempted? Do you ever look at Burks sitting there? And, to me, this has been a nightmare year for this player, and he has a future in this league, and he's going to be good. And as Balky and I were talking about Ingram, I think Burks is a guy you get in business with next year, and it looks completely different. But his 25 catches, it's unremarkable, and he's, but people talk about those 25 catches like he's a Christian Watson or something like that. Your thoughts on Burks? Is he just your 19th player that we're never going to see on your roster? Or do you actually consider getting this kind of game?
Well, I do have him rostered in 1 of my leagues, but I can't trust him right now. I mean, quarterback change. It's to Willis. He's, I'm leery of that. And quite honestly, it just comes down to who else I have to play, and I've got better options to play. So,
and the band is playing its last few songs. If you're not going to dance with him, pretty soon,
right? I mean, I do like him. I think he is, their stud receiver going forward, and he'll be high on my board next year. But I mean, right now, I can't play him based on who else is on that particular team.
He's a great mismatch receiver that plays with burst, and it's just it's a lost year. Sometimes with rookies, that's what happens.
Well, he's a mini me of AJ Brown. I mean, and that's they let the AJ Brown go. I don't think I would have ever done that, but they let him go. They traded and they got mini me, and he just needs time to develop.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, and people forget, he missed time with the concussion obviously this year. Any missed reps, any missed game time, that always hurts.
Lost his inhaler.
He lost, in preseason, right? Like he was having
lost the general manager his job.
In first place, Farrell, what happened with John Robinson? How do you have your team in first place and you get fired?
Well,
was there stuff going on that we don't know about?
I have to be diplomatic here. It's very difficult to do that on 3 shots of bourbon and half a bottle of coffee. But I will tell you that that there's a history of decisions there that you just stack them one on top of each other and then it falls down. That's how it would happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised on that as well. Like, I can't believe you let a winning man, a GM, go.
Yeah, it was surprising to me. I'll tell you what else. I was talking with Brian Jasiak on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown right before this tonight, and we were talking about Pat Freiermuth because he, like you, a really successful regular season in the main event this year, Rick. he and his brother didn't take a tight end until the 8th round. They get Freiermuth, and it's pretty much worked out for them most of the year. Obviously, not every single week with Freiermuth. And he really killed owners last week. Didn't even get a target. But now, as we look at his matchup against the Raiders this week, how confident would you feel? How confident should FFPC players feel about rolling him back out there this week against Las Vegas, even though he never saw the ball last week?
Well, I think you're getting Pickett back, and Pickett likes him. Where, if you notice, the last 2 weeks, Deontay Johnson was on fire because he was getting the targets. Underneath Pickett, he wasn't getting really all the targets. So there's a decision you got to make: is where's Freiermuth going to be? I mean, who else do you have on a roster? For me, I've got a better tight end that I'm going to be playing. And for me, the question comes down to is, do I want to put somebody like Algiers in my flex spot, or do I want Freiermuth to be in my flex spot? Right now I got Algiers there, and if I like the idea of him running. Baltimore's got some guys out. I think it's going to be a running game. That's what Atlanta's doing. They got the new quarterback in there, so they're even running more. I think once again, I got till tomorrow at noon, but I think that's the way I'm leaning. But with Pickett in there, I think Freiermuth's to play. And I'd be a little leery of Johnson, though, as a receiver. I have to start him in 2 leagues, but I'm leery of that just because of the quarterback change.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm okay. Yeah, I was right about Burks. Balky and Dave Turp were not. I was right about Burks. So let me go to one that I was wrong about. And he flashes, and it's not his fault with what's going on in Denver this year, but Cortland Sutton. We started the show talking about a tight end that's caught fire. And has had a few good weeks. And I suppose what we're looking for here in the next 2 weeks is the potentiality of some of these receivers who might be the third receiver to actually catch fire, kind of like Zay Jones did last week. So let me ask you this. Cortland Sutton, is there any way that this season of 1 touchdown and maybe 60 catches can be saved, or should Cortland Sutton remain buried on fantasy players' benches?
Well, I mean, if he's actually playing on Sunday, and you got to wait till Sunday to know that. I mean, they're saying it's a good bet, but and Russell Wilson. I mean, I've got Hurst in one of my leagues, FFPC leagues. My backup is Russell Wilson, so I've got to play Wilson this week because obviously Hurst is out. And if I had Sutton, I'd be putting him in there. In the original, before the season started, I targeted players I didn't want on my team. And Denver players, with the exception of the running back, Williams, I stayed away from them. I did not think a lot of Russell Wilson and the changeover. And I stayed away from the receivers. And I was right. I mean, that's kind of I had an opportunity to take Sutton in almost every league, and I didn't do it. I was a little bit more bullish on Judy, but I stayed away from him. But at this point, Sutton's coming back, and Russell's been playing better before his concussion. They're playing a Rams team that's beat up, and I think if you can fit him in, and once again, it depends on what your options are, but I think Sutton's a good play if he's playing for this week.
So let me ask you this, Rick. You mentioned that you were down on Denver players this year. The majority of fantasy players were not. In fact, I didn't mind getting Russell Wilson where I got him in drafts. I was targeting Cortland Sutton, not so much Judy or Okawepa now. I just didn't get Javonte Williams because I wasn't able to get him in drafts because he went so high. Can you tell us a little bit more besides, the fact that they changed or maybe it was just the fact, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback coming to Denver. Was that the reason? Just too much change there and you didn't trust it?
I'm Wisconsin boy, and I love Russell Wilson. He was at Wisconsin, and he played great in Seattle. But, the last couple of years in Seattle wasn't that good. Pete Carroll's not a dumb coach. He's very smart. And when you kind of look at it and you kind of hear in between the lines what was going on out there, you maybe thought that Russell was losing a little bit. And even proved out in Denver, the rumors were that, he didn't want to run with the ball. Well, what made Russell Wilson great was when he'd run with the ball. He'd run with the ball. It'd open up a lot more things. He had one of the best accurate arms on the run with throwing, and he wasn't doing that in Denver. I thought it was – I was actually hoping the Packers were going to trade Aaron Rodgers to Denver,
yeah.
and we could have, broken the bank and had all these draft picks. But I don't know. I guess it was a gut feeling more of why I stayed away. I stayed away from Harris, the running back from Pittsburgh, and a bunch of the Pittsburgh players. I love Tomlin as a coach, but there was just so many unknowns. I tried to, during the draft, as depending on where I was drafting, like I said, I had my block of guys that I decided, these guys I don't want on my team no matter what. And I, for the most part, held them. I did end up with Russell Wilson as a backup, but I drafted him. I mean, I think I got him in like the 12th round or something like that. And he was the backup to Hurts. So sometimes it comes down to your gut. I mean, if you're paying attention, you're watching the year before, Denver stuck with this guy for 5 more years. I mean, I don't know how you get out of that contract. So they've got a lot to do. Now, I'm not saying that Russell Wilson's done, but you have to watch how he plays. He's the reason. I don't think it's Hackett. I don't think it's the receivers. His receivers they've been hurt, but he's got to step up and play better. Now, I do think he's capable of it, but I didn't want anything to do with it going into the season.
I see a lot of drafts. It's just here at the KFFSC, I'm involved with a lot of draft boards, a lot of attention, and I notice that drafters sometimes they'll have a group of players that they want, and then all those guys will slip away from them, and so then they'll take a guy that they really are not very high on, but I think that and they'll tell you after the draft, I didn't really like him, but he was the best value there, and I think he's not really a value if you don't like him. Do you ever go into a draft with a list of players that says, no way. I don't care. They're not going to be on my roster. I'm not putting this player on my roster. You ever go into drafts like that?
Well,
hear this commentary. He has some value at some draft number. No, he doesn't. If you don't believe in his
if you don't like him.
If you don't want to play him, if you're never going to play him, he has no value to you.
Well, for instance, Harris, the running back at Pittsburgh, I did not want him on my team. I just didn't feel good about him. And now, if he was there in the 4th round, 5th round, maybe. But I mean, there was no way I was taking him in with any pick that I had in the first 2 rounds.
But now guys were thinking like I was, and they said, "Oh, I'm not having Josh Jacobs at all. He can't do anything." And they couldn't read the stat line from last year, but that's a whole nother.
Well, right, and actually,
Jacobs can't do anything, and he just falls and falls and falls, and then you pick him.
Well, and I was actually probably picking him higher. He was actually my one player. I have him on 4 leagues, 4 of them, 2 in the FFPC and 2 in my other teams. And quite honestly, he's made my teams. I was the number 1 seed in the two other playoffs that I'm in. And based on him, he's had a great year. He was coming into a contract year. You add an element of Devontae Adams to that team. They upgraded their offensive line. I was a little bit nervous when they were playing him in that first preseason game. Not going to lie. But I had him. I had Aaron Jones high on my list in terms of somebody I wanted on my team. I wanted guys for running backs that could catch the ball out of the backfield. Right. We did. I probably did get a little bit lucky with Jacobs, but I was drafting him probably around higher than what he was going in most drafts because I wanted him on the team on the ones I could get him. So from that aspect, that's where I was. I got Aaron Jones. I got him on 3 of my FFPC teams, and anywhere from that 20th. I think one of them I had like the 18th pick or something like that. So I got him anywhere from the late second round to the middle of the 3rd round where he was still available. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of guys that have a lot of fire with them. Pitts was a player like that for me. I wasn't going to draft him, and you had to pay a high draft spot for him. And I very much like the player and like his skill set. But if you think about how they won last night, Jacksonville versus the Jets, is the quarterback was forced to use his feet. He doesn't do it every week, but he did it last night, and that's how I thought Mariota would win when he did win at Atlanta. And I didn't foresee the season being as bad as it was for Pitts. But my point is that sometimes you just look at what a team's got to do to win, and it doesn't necessarily include your fantasy player's best skill set. So his potentiality to be a superstar somewhere else, he's not somewhere else. He's where he is.
Well, it's based on the system. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you have to pay attention to that when you draft. For same reason, I got one share of Pitts in nine leagues, one share of Pitts, and I mean, I dropped him here a couple weeks ago when he got hurt.
Okay, so here's a new law, Rick, for the Denver listeners: rookie coach, rookie general manager, new quarterback. Let's go somewhere else.
But it seems simple, right? But I mean, this isn't new this year. I mean, we've had, how many guests have we had on, Farrell, that told us in the drafting season, you're talking about a new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, new offense, new head coach, and they stay away from him. A lot of successful players have stayed away from him, right? Because that change begets unknown. And sometimes the unknown is very, very good, and sometimes it can be very, very bad, like it has been in Denver this year as well. I got to ask you, Rick, about Marquise Brown. Now, the latest we have on him is that he's questionable for this game against Tampa Bay. I always get nervous on the midweek downgrade on the injury report. Full practice he got in on Tuesday. Then all of a sudden he was limited with a groin issue yesterday. He was limited again today. It sounds like it was just, maintenance. They don't want to overexert him. But now he's going to have Trace McSorley throwing to him this week. You already have a target hog in DeAndre Hopkins on the other side of the field. Is Marquise Brown, are you breaking ties against him? Should he be on fantasy benches this week unless you absolutely have to have a receiver?
I'm playing him in 2 leagues, and I'm looking at the game script. Expecting Tampa's going to get out, going to get a lead, and it's going to really force Arizona's hand. I don't see them being able to keep up with them. You saw the point spread, at 7 for Tampa Bay. If Tampa plays like they're capable of, and it's a national game in terms of night game, so Brady's going to want to shine. Once again, game scripts it leads me to believe that Arizona's going to have to throw, and Hopkins is going to get his share. But I think Marquise Brown. I guess I'm playing him in 2 leagues. I have him in another league that I'm not playing him, but that's because I have, once again, better options.
Right.
But I definitely think he's in play.
You mentioned players you got right about earlier in avoiding Denver was correct. Were there any other players that you avoided like the plague and were right about, or players that you got on a bunch of teams this year, Rick, that you're really happy about because they've been coming through for you?
Well, Jacobs number 1 in terms of who I had who I had circled, so to speak. I listen a lot to Sirius as I'm driving around for work and stuff like that. So I the Fantasy Channel and all the different pundits on there. And you get what everybody is saying, and everybody was talking about, especially, the high stakes, leagues where, draft quarterbacks, don't draft the quarterback right away. Don't draft the quarterback. I actually had the exact opposite philosophy. I tried to get Mahomes, and my fallback from Mahomes was Burrows. I didn't reach for Allen. I had him in one of my leagues, but it's my dynasty league, so I've had him for a while. But my 2 big things is I wanted to have a top quarterback, and when I'm saying a top quarterback, I wanted what I considered a top 5 quarterback, and I ended up with Mahomes in 3 leagues. I got Burrows in 2 leagues. I had Hurts in a league, and
it's a good mix,
right? So I went with that, and then the second thing I did, especially with the FFPC, is I wanted to have a top 5 tight end, and in some cases, I said if I can get a two top 7 tight ends. So I went heavy and early on the quarterbacks when I could, and the tight ends. So Goddard, I got Goddard in 3 leagues. Now he was hurt for a little bit, but he really performed early on. And everybody right now is saying, well, Andrews is still the number 2, tight end. I've been hearing that all day, for all week. He's still the number two. But Goddard was right there before he got hurt.
Yeah,
and he's coming back tomorrow. Now, I don't know, obviously with Minshew and stuff like that, it remains to be seen. But I've put him in every lineup except for one that I have him in. So I liked Goddard. Mahomes, I think Mahomes is the best quarterback out there by far in terms of passing. And next year, I mean, now if I go back and say what I did is I put emphasis on quarterbacks early, and I'm talking 4th and 5th round, where a lot of the guys were going, don't draft until the 5th, 6th, 7th round, and everybody was talking about the quality of quarterback is deep. Well, it's not. It wasn't. This year proved it out. It wasn't. Right. And as we know, unless you hit on the right running back, this year it's been pretty much all about receivers. So you needed to have a good combination of receivers. But I thought there were plenty of them out there. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but that's kind of how I did it.
I've got a question. I get to when I can speak, I get to ask this question of all the guests, and we've thrown around a lot of names, so you don't get to use any of those names that you've thrown around. And we had a guy last week, sweetheart of a guy, try to sneak in Donovan Peoples-Jones as a sleeper, and that was disallowed. So this is a very important question. This is a guy that I want to know. I want to know a bust, and we've talked about several. But more importantly, I want to know who that sleeper is. You see who you're holding back in your hip pocket, that guy that you're going to play. Trevor Holt, a good friend, asked a question here about quarterback, and maybe Balky will have time to approach that with you afterwards. But we need we want to know who's not going to work this weekend, and then please a sleeper, if you will.
Okay. If I'm staying away from the Cleveland game in terms of receivers, so Cooper, I would say I've got him on my bench, and that's strictly, to be honest with you, weather related. The only thing I'm looking at in that game is the 2 running backs, and I got Peoples-Jones too. So I'm playing him in one league because I have to, but I've got him on the bench as well. So I would say those guys in terms of who I'm staying away from. In terms of guys that I'm very interested in, I like the running back, and I keep messing up his name, Pacheco from Kansas City. I think any Kansas City player is in play this week.
Yeah.
I think
we're going to disallow that Pacheco as a sleeper. We're disallowing.
Right. Well, okay, but I would say
a real sleeper.
In that same game, I'm looking at Marquise Goodwin from Seattle.
Again, there's a sleeper by now.
Once again, game script is going to lead that they're going to have to chuck the ball around. Metcalf's the primary receiver, but I think Goodwin's going to have a good game.
He had that good one in his hip pocket. He didn't want to give it to him.
I know. We got it out of
his back pocket.
Farrell, you missed your calling as a police interrogator. I really think you did. Couple of quick follow-ups to that. You mentioned the weather for the Cleveland-New Orleans game, Rick. Is there any love for Taysom Hill as a tight end in like a football guys league where he's getting 1.5 points per catch? Or are you still staying away from Hill? Because I would think he'd be more involved in the game plan this week with that type of weather.
Well, right. And actually, I have him in 2 FFPC leagues. I'm playing. I'm trying to remember. I played him last week. The problem with that is, he's getting 1.5 per catch, but he's not catching the ball.
Not catching the ball. You're right.
He's running the ball, and I do think he is in play. It comes down to, once again, who do you have in that flex position? I got better tight ends, so he's not going to be. I'm not having him in my tight end position, and it comes down to who do I have for my 2 flexes. And I think this week I've decided on somebody else, but I do think he's got the potential to have, one of those, 2 touchdown run games, because I do think a lot of stuff's going to be done on the ground there in that game because of the weather.
What about, and Stacey Perez chiming in too? If it's a Taysom Hill game, how does that affect Alvin Kamara? Because if you're kind of like forgetting about the receivers in that game, I mean, New Orleans, Olave's not playing in that game, so New Orleans are really up a creek without a paddle.
Stacey wants you to give her Monday's newspaper today. That's what she wants to do. She wants the whole write-up on the game.
Rick, is Kamara in for a big game?
I think so. I'm hoping so. I'm playing him in the 2 leagues I have him in, so I've always been a big Kamara fan. I'm not sure about the coaching down there, why they've taken their best player out of so many games, but I would expect I mean, if he doesn't have 25 touches tomorrow, then I wouldn't. That coach shouldn't even be, on the field, because he should have 25 touches. Chubb should have 25 touches.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what these guys should be doing. And I, for as good as Chubb is, I think they're still misusing him. I mean, I'd be giving him more touches, just like in Green Bay, Aaron Jones. So those are the three guys, Chubb, Jones, and Kamara. I'm baffled by how the coaches are using them. And Chubb's got a lot of yards. I mean, he's not leading the league. He's had some big games, but yet the coaching staff just disappears him.
Yeah.
So, I do think Kamara should, by game script, have at least 25 touches and should have a big game. So I would definitely play him. I think he's, a top 5 running back play. I think Chubb's a top 5 running back play tomorrow as well. So,
KFFSC legend, Farrell mentioned this before. KFFSC legend Trevor Holt in the chat right now. He's asking about Kirk Cousins. He said, how many quarterbacks would you play over Cousins this week? So now, just to kind of answer this question myself, and I want you guys to weigh in on this. Obviously, the big ones: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Fields. I'm playing all those guys over him. Herbert, I'm playing him over Cousins this week. It gets a little bit more interesting when you talk about Joe Burrow going to New England, pretty good defense, and then Tua Tagovailoa this week. I mean, Rick, you know the Green Bay secondary, whether it's Joe Barry's fault or whoever's fault it is, they gave up a lot of big plays, and I think that could be the case again this week too. So I think it's closer with Burrow and Tagovailoa. I think I'd go Tagovailoa over Cousins, but man, I'm playing Cousins over Prescott. I'm playing him over Geno Smith. Gardner Minshew, Tom Brady. I mean, all those guys. How do you feel about Kirk Cousins this week?
I'm starting Burrows. I'm starting Tua over him. I kind of agree 100% with you. I think, after Tua maybe is where the line is. I mean, Kirk Cousins is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
In the same game.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, look at the first half last week.
Right.
And I love Justin Jefferson. But I mean, there are times where Kirk Cousins, he can't hit, a barn with a cow if he's throwing a cow at it. And
Rick, I don't know if you could see this or not, but Hudson Kern-Reeve has chimed in on the message board here. We need a precise operational definition of a sleeper, and since he is in academia, we'll respond to this in terms that he can understand. We're going to refer that to committee.
We will. We absolutely will. I'm curious if we can maybe we'll get the dictionary definition on before the end of the broadcast tonight. But quite frankly, Rick, we have kept you on so long. You have been very gracious with your time on a holiday weekend. Congratulations on all the success you've already had in previous years. Good luck the rest of the way. You obviously set up your teams for some big time paydays this year. I want to wish you all the best. Stay warm in Oshkosh. By the way, guys, I forgot I'm wearing my alma mater sweatshirt tonight. University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Hail Titans. Wearing that tonight. I'm just up the road from where Rick is right now. So listen, I really appreciate you. Again, holiday weekend. So awesome to have you. Good luck in week 16 and the rest of the way, Rick. You were fantastic tonight.
Thanks, guys. And my daughter plays soccer for UWO. So
I used to cover that team. It's a good program there. They got a really good program. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's got 1 year left next year, and that's how I spend my falls, is driving the soccer games and fantasy football. So
I remember I used to sit up in the in Titan Stadium in the press box up there covering. They don't have the men's program there anymore, but I covered the men's and women's team. And thank God they were both good, because those are some lonely, cold nights up there. But always tremendous soccer for them. That was awesome, Rick.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you, my friend, and a happy new year to Rick Kaufman, the 21st place finisher in the Football Guys Players Championship regular season. He is loaded for bear, literally. I forgot to bring that up too. He, I think I mentioned it in his bio. He grew up obviously in Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and he has lived in the Chicago area for almost 3 decades. Hates the Bears, Farrell. Absolutely hates them. It's good to know that you can take the Packers fan out of Wisconsin, but you can't take the Wisconsin out of the Packers fan.
That's
good for him.
Truth.
Love to hear that. We are up against it here. Let's go rapid fire on these start sits here and try to help some people out. I feel like we need to pay off this Algier question. Let's do that first. And if we still got time, we will get to the rest of them. But Hudson and John Terry, both former guests, all-stars of this program, want to know. They have a situation. I'm assuming this is a team they co-own in an FPC or main event or something. Tyler Algier, Juwan Johnson, Rashad White, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Okay. He did not say how many he has to start this week. So I feel like we should just probably rank them, and we'll rank them like it's a football guys contest, because I think, quite frankly, I think that's what it is. All right, so you have Algier here against Baltimore. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you just heard from Rick Kaufman. He is avoiding receivers in that game. Peoples-Jones is at home against the Saints. Juwan Johnson in that same game on the road in Cleveland. And then the other one is Rashad White, who is going up against, we just heard it from Rick when he was talking about Brady, at Arizona. Okay, so I like White better than I do Algier this week. I think that's my number one guy on this list.
I like Algier's better than I like White because he needs to support the rookie quarterback in the running game, and he'll get plenty of opportunities.
Okay, all right. So, but Algier hasn't been catching passes, though.
Yeah, well, if he runs for touchdowns, it won't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay, all right. So there you go. So he likes Algier. I like White. Farrell likes Algier. Where does Juwan Johnson and Donovan Peoples-Jones factor in on this? Peoples-Jones is pretty late for me. I'd put Juwan Johnson ahead of him.
You know what? They've been playing football in Cleveland for a lot of years. If you forget that, ask John Anderson. They've had games with all types of inclement weather, and they will again, and they will this weekend. And I just don't think it's going to be the Armageddon that says they cannot pass the ball. Now, I've been burned on that before. I started Baker Mayfield in one of those games and got 5 fantasy points. But we heard our guest say tonight that he had to start Peoples-Jones. He had no other choice. And so I think that's what you might be down to. That's a player that short passes in the flat, catch and run with the ball. I trust him probably a little bit more than Johnson on the road in the inclement weather. But those are all good questions. Those are all very, very good questions. It's difficult to make decisions amongst those players, but that's what you want. You want to have those players for that 1 or 2 spots that are all contributing ball players. You don't want to have Darrell Henderson on your roster, who's now a free agent.
Yeah. And Farrell, by the way, you might have been slighted that you were not asked the Christian Watson question from Hudson before, but he likes your answer here.
So that's good.
He's giving you the props on that one.
You know, I have a feeling that if I were one of his students, that he would like some of my answers, and I would get what I got from most of my professors in college was a gentleman's C.
That should be one of my KFFSC team names next year. A
gentleman's C.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it is.
All right, we'll go.
There's no crime in a gentleman's C.
No, there's not. Absolutely. Life is pass fail. It's not A, B, C, D, or F. Henry in Pittsburgh, Raheem Mostert against Balky's Packers, or roll out DeAndre Swift in Carolina. Merry Christmas. It's Henry in Pittsburgh. Farrell, I have seen this movie before when the Packers defense takes on Raheem Mostert. And let me tell you this, it does not end well for Green Bay. Give me Mostert over Swift this week.
Mostert all day long. His name sounds like must start.
Yeah. Brad in Philadelphia. Another Packers question. Would you start Alan Lazard in Miami or last week's GOAT Jacoby Myers hosting the Bengals? I don't really think that New England is going to be in a position to control that game. And so I think Myers is going to be targeted. It might be a slow first half, but I think he picks it up in the second half. Alan Lazard he was so important in blocking in that last game. I think he had 1 catch, and Aaron Rodgers is praising him for his blocking. He's one of the best blocking receivers in the NFL. Packers win that game through Dillon and Jones. I don't trust Lazard. Give me Myers over Lazard this week.
I'll take Myers too, but Myers has earned it. He's got the resume. Lazard has. How many years? Is this Lazard's 3rd year with the team or so?
I believe 3rd. He was on the practice squad there.
Yeah, he's had time to learn, and he still cannot learn where to line up, even when he's in motion. When you're in motion, you're kind of like the star of the show. Where you're going is what it's all about. And I love the play where they had they had Rogers in clear audio where he said, "Are you going to keep going?"
That was great. You're going to come all the way across?
Yeah,
That
you're
was
going to come.
awesome.
Oh, yeah, just come on.
I was watching that on ESPN on Monday night. I'm like, I must have not heard that correctly. And then Joe Buck said, I loved Rogers on that. You're going to come all the way across. That was tremendous stuff.
Yes, come on.
All right. So we're both saying Myers there. Brian in Irvine, California. What's up, gentlemen? I only have room for one of these guys in my football guys lineup this week. Greg Dulcich at the Rams on Christmas Day, or Cole Kmet taking on the Bills defense in Chicago. Happy holidays. That's Brian in Irvine, California. I think, one of the things that Dulcich has been, I wouldn't say feasting on, but I think part of the reason he's been so successful is because Cortland Sutton hasn't been out there. Cortland Sutton's back this week. I lean towards Kmet in a game that Fields is going to want to run, and the Bears are going to want to run. I think they're going to have to pass in this game, and I think Kmet is the beneficiary of that. I like Kmet better than Dulcich this week.
You're never going to win anything in any fantasy football league being employed with Cole Kmet. Where is this game, Balky?
That is in Chicago.
Rams in Denver.
Yeah. No, Rams is in Los Angeles.
Rams is in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Where did Dulcich go to school?
He went to UCLA, I believe.
Yeah, it's a homecoming for Dulcich. We're going to make it happen, baby. It is going to be a beautiful thing. We're going to tear the roof off of fantasy football points in the FFPC. The Dulcich is my sleeper of the week. Get him in your lineup.
Don't get the Bears mixed up. It is not Cole Kmet, the Bear, that Farrell's saying to start. It is the Bruin, Greg Dulcich. If you want to start this
I like
week.
what you did there, Bo.
Thank you so much. Mike in Arlington, Texas is our final email on this holiday weekend. Dear Balky and Farrell, what's your take on starting Tua Tagovailoa at home against the Packers on Sunday over Kirk Cousins, also at home, versus the New York Giants? Now, this is Mike in Arlington asking this, but I feel like we just touched on this with Trevor Holt. To me, it's close between Tagovailoa and Cousins. I'm not a self-loathing Packers fan, but I don't trust this defense at all. I think Miami puts up a lot of points. I think Mostert has a big day. I think Tyreek Hill has a big day. I think Tua Tagovailoa has a big day. I'm going to play Tagovailoa over Cousins.
If you think long, you think wrong. Pick one of them and stick with it. This is you've got one of the best quarterback opportunities for this week. Just don't worry about it. Pick the guy that you like, that you believe in.
Go with God. Go with your gut. That's the
this
best
is
possible advice.
This is the best gut. When you put yourself by drafting into this situation, that's all you got to do is just go with your gut. There's not a wrong answer there. One's going to score more than the other, but neither's the wrong answer.
We always say, we offer all the best advice we possibly can give you. But remember, we didn't draft your team. We didn't manage your team. You do. It's your team. If you don't like our advice and you want to go the other way, go the other way. Okay. We're just giving you our.
No, they should do what we tell them.
Do it. Okay. Well, there you go. So I'm saying I'm being the whole liberal. Yeah, do whatever, man. It's all good. And Farrell's like, no,
they're coming here for advice. They're not. They don't want us to soft sell it.
All right, we won't soft sell it. I want to thank you, Farrell, because you are playing hurt tonight. Clearly.
Oh. Is it that obvious?
No, when you said when you're mixing the bourbon and you're making your own purple drink.
I've tried everything. I've tried everything I possibly could.
No, you sounded great. You did a great job tonight. I want you. My Christmas wish is for you to get some rest as much as you can. I know you rarely sleep and rest anyway, but do what you can and make sure it is a Merry Christmas in Louisville for you and your family. Certainly appreciate you hopping aboard tonight.
Same to you, Balky. God bless you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Farrell. Farrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Love that guy. Always love talking football with him. And I want to thank him and Rick Kaufman, our guest. Maybe I'll just pop up, if the roads weren't so bad, maybe I'd pop down to a Kaufman family Christmas in Oshkosh. Like I said, it's 20, 25-minute drive down Highway 41, and I could be there hanging out with them, talking a little bit more ball tonight. I don't know if I'm going to do that because the roads are so bad up here. We got a winter storm warning going until tomorrow at 6 a.m., so I'll just probably tuck in tonight and let the Kaufmans enjoy their Christmas. I want to thank the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. We are live next Friday at 10/9 Central for our big, it's our last show of 2022. And by the way, I think I buried the lead on this, guys. I cannot believe I forgot. Tonight was the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour's 600th episode. I should have made more of a big deal out of this, but I totally forgot. But 600 episodes. You just watched the 600th episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Tremendous stuff. The support from the FFPC players has been tremendous, and it's been awesome doing this show for whatever it's been. This is a 12th year doing it now. So it's tremendous. And you guys keep it going. We certainly appreciate that. In case you missed it, watch the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with the FFPC main event, regular season, 16th place finisher, Brian Jasiak. That is already live on the FFPC YouTube page, which you're on right now probably, or you're watching this on Twitter or Facebook. It will be on rotoviz.com/podcast if you prefer the audio only version. That is going to be up there tomorrow morning. High Stakes Lowdown returns on Tuesday. FFPC main event championship round, second place team owner Norm Behrens will be my guest on that. That's Tuesday night at 10/9 Central. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network goes live Wednesday night at 10/9 Central on the BSN app, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube with RotoViz's Curtis Patrick. Curtis was supposed to be my guest this past week. He had to step out, so Zach Kruger from NBC Sports Edge and RotoViz stepped in. We chopped it up for 2 hours on Wednesday night. In case you missed that, download the Better Sports Network app for free in the App Store or Google Play, and then you can watch that. Really fun episode. Zach was awesome. He's going to be back on that show. Curtis Patrick will be on this Wednesday. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge, no draft or salary cap. Play the classic version with 12 players. Play the slim version with no defenses and kickers with 10 players. Remember, only one player per NFL team. You can play for $200, $35, 100-team format, 30-team format. And if you win that 10-team league, you into the 2023 FFPC main event for free. Don't forget to win a $500,000 grand prize this holiday season with the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. $200 to enter that. $500,000 grand prize, payout down to, I think, 1,000 teams in that. And then if you want to load up, feel free in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge, $35 to enter that, and a winner is going to get $100,000. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Happy Hanukkah to everybody celebrating already. Merry Christmas for those of you who will be celebrating on Sunday. And I hope everybody has a very happy and safe holiday season here. We will be back next Friday. Your holiday weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Can't remember if I mentioned it on this program or not, ladies and gentlemen, but remember, you have the weekly challenge for the FFPC lineups locked at 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, because we have 11 games going on Saturday. Since the majority of the games are on Saturday this week, the lineups will lock Saturday, tomorrow at 1 p.m. That also means get your season-long lineups in as well. Don't be missing out on that. I know it's a busy time for everybody with Christmas Eve and Christmas, but you work very hard on this team all summer, all fall long. Don't miss out on some fantasy greatness now. Get those lineups in. If you're watching this right now, get those lineups in now, or get them in early tomorrow morning so you can spend the rest of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with your family. Hopefully the ball bounces your way in the championship round, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk with you next Friday.